Hi, everyone.
So welcome, everyone. If you're here to talk about player behavior in League of Legends, you're in the right place. So how many of you have played League of Legends? Okay, so I think that's everybody, but I'm not sure. So just in case, for those of you who may not know, League of Legends is a multiplayer online battle arena in which players log in. There's no single player, so they log in and they play matches, usually 5 versus 5 other humans. And the goal is you pick a champion, and everyone else on your team also picks a unique champion, and everyone on the enemy team. You fight together, or you fight against each other, and then the first team to destroy the enemy's base wins. When we're talking about player behavior, we want to give you a heads up. There's going to be some inappropriate language in this talk. Yes, many fucks will be given. So, I am George Sclears. My summoner name is Fruit Strike. I'm a game engineer at Riot Games. Thank you. So aside from playing League of Legends and other video games, I love playing board games. It's really fun. And I like to make game designers do push-ups.
My name is Carl Quo. My summoner name is Status Quo.
Yeah, we think it's clever too. Very clever.
I'm a producer on the player behavior team. That specifically means that I think and worry about the problem space of player behavior and talk with the team about it, as well as identifying solutions that we may want to go after and experiments we want to do and help the team prioritize and think through them.
Did you ban me?
I don't have access to any banning tools.
So the way we want to run this is basically we just want to give you a quick presentation up front, just get some information across to you, and then we want to open the discussion for the remainder of it. The majority of the session is going to be question and answer. So any questions that you guys have, we'll be answering them afterwards. So we'll have a nice big chunk of time for that. So think of some good ones. All right, so what do we want to discuss here today? Specifically, we want to talk about player behavior as it pertains to League of Legends and the gaming community. So this is both in-game behavior. It could be behavior on the forums, for example. So anything that encompasses player behavior. Some things we don't want to discuss here today, I'll just let you read these. So neither of us are on those teams, so we're not going to be the experts in answering many of these questions. And finally, we don't want to talk about specific individual cases. We're happy to talk about things like outliers and things like that, but we want to stay away from talking about why person X got banned in this case or didn't get banned in that case, etc. Toxic behavior is a term that you're going to hear a lot in this. And what we mean by toxic behavior is any kind of behavior that negatively impacts the gaming experience of other players. So this can manifest in a number of different ways. It could be racist or homophobic terms or anything sexist terms, things like that while you're playing the game. It could be swearing at someone. So for instance, we can swear in the game. It's fine. If I screw up, oh, damn, I screwed up. I'm not going to get banned for saying that or, even fuck. It's fine. But if you start swearing at someone in kind of an angry way, then that would be an example where we think that that's toxic behavior. Also, if you're feeding kills to the enemy team, that is toxic behavior. We don't want that in our game. So here's an example from summonerscode.com. Yeah, so that's an example of toxic behavior. We don't want that in the game. Here's another example. Yes. So, here is another example of something that we don't want in the game. These are both good examples of toxic behavior. So, Penny Arcade came up with a comic, The Greater Internet Fuckwad Theory. And basically they say, you have a normal person, you give them anonymity, you give them an audience, and they become a total fuckwad. They just start doing things that they would normally not do. And we agree with this for the most part, but GTZ from fatuglyerslutty.com made one change to it. And she said it's not so much anonymity as it is the lack of consequences that causes people to act like jerks. So for example, if you're driving down the street and somebody gives you the finger in their car, I mean, you can look them dead in the eye. They're giving you the finger, but then they just turn right and drive away. There's no consequence for them. If there were a police right there, or maybe if you're walking down the street and bigger than them, they might think twice about giving you the finger. So here's a typical game on Summoner's Rift. Yes, this is Summoner's Rift. Yes. Yes, this is my art. I'm applying to be lead character artist at Riot Games. So how does toxic behavior spread? Okay, so you've got a normal game of Summoner's Rift, 5 versus 5, and everyone's kind of fine, but maybe player 10 has had kind of a bad day. Player 10's boss yelled at him, or maybe his client got upset, maybe his girlfriend or his boyfriend got upset, you know. And so the jungler comes for a gank and fails and winds up giving double buffs to his lane opponent, and he says, and this is a really not nice racist term that he used in all chat, and that's not cool. And of course, so player 6 is kind of upset, and what happens? So are a couple of other people in the game who really don't like the use of that term. And so they start saying really angry things in all chat too. And so next thing you know, all chat is just a giant shitstorm of people talking trash to each other, right? So what happens? That starts making other people upset, and by the end of the game, everybody's pissed off, or they're really sad that they played to begin with. Right? So what happens when this game is done? Time for the next game. Player 6, who was perfectly fine, had a great day, just wanted to play some League of Legends, get some good games going. Now player 6 goes into his next game, and he's already pissed off, and he's more likely to exhibit toxic behavior. Both player 6 and player 10 are perfectly normal people. They're just like me and you. They don't do mean things normally, and these atypical outbursts have caused the toxicity to spread in a ripple effect. And of course, so there we go, he's starting his next game. So at Riot Games, we firmly believe that most League of Legends players are very sportsmanlike by nature. We're normal people. You know, we have outbursts every now and then, and it's toxic behavior, and it's not good, but we think that this is preventable. We think contexts that are inside and outside of the game drive us to these atypical outbursts of behavior. So how do you tackle that complicated of a challenge? Do you want to
Yep,
take her?
absolutely. So when we started the Player Behavior Initiative about a year ago, one of the first things we sat down and did was think about the problem space and all the things that go on around it, and did a bunch of research and tried to understand, you know, what were these contexts that happened, what caused the negative behavior to become toxic and spread between games, and we really tried to understand that, and we came up with 5 sort of strategies, sort of paths that we wanted to walk down to try and prevent toxic behavior. And the first one is shield players from the impact of toxic behaviors, which is to say, we know that we're not going to get toxic behavior down to nothing. Like we can't wave a magic wand, implement a magic feature, and suddenly there is no toxic behavior ever. It's gonna come up, it's gonna happen. But how can we tackle it such that when it does show up, it doesn't have as bad of a toxic ripple effect within games, it doesn't spread from one game to another, and it doesn't even necessarily hit players in that game as hard as it does currently. Our second pillar is to reform or remove toxic players, and that word choice and order is fairly specific. We really look to try and reform players towards sportsmanlike behavior or neutral behavior wherever we can. We'd really prefer it if people, you know, have a chance to understand what the social norms of our community are and act within them. When it comes down to it, when we find people who want to consistently be trolls in our game and want to consistently act in a toxic manner, we will remove them from the game, but we really prefer to reform them first. Pillar 3 is create a culture of sportsmanship. We're not going to be able to do this alone. Riot Games by itself, implementing features and talking to you guys, can't create change in the community. It has to come from everyone in the community. It has to come from you guys. And that's a really high priority for us, is to engage with you guys in discussion at every turn and try to implement features that don't dictate what behavior should or should not be, but in fact give you guys the tools to say what you think is acceptable within your community and what you think is unacceptable in your community. And with by all of our powers combined, hopefully we can get to a place where it's super sportsmanlike all the time. Pillar 4 is reinforce positive behaviors. So similarly to how we want to reform and remove toxic players and therefore sort of show you how not to be bad, we also want to reinforce positive behavior wherever we see it, so that you can sort of have a path of how to be a positive, good influence within the community as well. It's the classic carrot to the stick. And what we want to do is make sure that every player has an aspirational path of how to be a positive influence in the community, or at least how to be a reasonably sportsmanlike behavior or reasonably sportsmanlike player in the community wherever possible. Our fifth pillar is our fifth pillar is to create better match chemistry. We know that when you go into a game with where you're just playing with friends, it's a full pre-made of 5 or a full pre-made game. You have some of the best games ever, right? Like they're usually zero real reports certainly, and you have a lot of trust and you have a lot of confidence in your teammates, right? And that's kind of the important fact is you have trust and you have confidence in your teammates, and so that leads you to understand exactly what they'll expect you to do, both within game mechanics as well as just in behavior. And so what we want to do is try to find a way that we can help you have that trust and confidence in strangers as much as possible, so that any game of League of Legends is like playing with a full pre-made team of 5s. So yeah, those are kind of our 5 pillars that we're pursuing, and a lot of features fall into one or more of those.
Okay, so I told you guys it was going to be a short presentation, so that's what we wanted to talk to you guys about. So now we want to take questions from you. We will, actually, do you want to talk briefly about, how many people here have used the Tribunal before? Okay, we should probably go over the Tribunal real quick. If you guys want to, do we have some people with microphones that are going to be going through the audience? Perfect. Okay, so if you have a question that you want to ask, go ahead and raise your hand, and we'll kind of like queue up. And then, Carl, do you want to talk about the Tribunal real quick while we?
Sure. So the Tribunal is a system that has been in League of Legends for a while now. What it does is it looks for, as you report other players or as various players are reported in game, it collects those reports and looks for patterns. So when someone has been consistently reported game after game, it builds a collection of recent games for that person and presents it back to the community. The community then reviews those games, which can be the item build, the kill-death ratio, but also the chat logs, and then basically has 2 options. They can say that the behavior is acceptable for the community and therefore pardon the player, or the behavior is unacceptable for their community and then punish the player. What then happens is as votes are cast, it records all those, and then depending on how those votes go, it will potentially either not take any action on the player if they're pardoned, or give them a time ban or warning, or in the worst cases where players are acting super consistently bad, it will permaban players. So.
Okay, so we have a mic out in the audience, correct? Okay. Is it, mic's not working?
Oh, there it goes.
I also have the Tribunal. Do you ever just search games for expletives or any type of behavior, or just even monitor any games for such behavior?
We have a few different ways we do it. Tribunal is our primary way, but we do manual sweeps of cases. Sometimes we get reports in from the community that our Tribunal is missing someone. We may investigate those. Additionally, we have done sweeps for various kinds of toxic behavior that the Tribunal may not be great at picking up on, and we will do sweeps for that. But generally speaking, we try to let the Tribunal handle it because it's the main way for the community to give feedback on what they consider acceptable and unacceptable. Yep.
Okay.
So first of all, I think you guys have come a long ways in improving behavior in online games, so I appreciate that. I'm sure a lot of other people here do, so thank you for that. So my point was on the mute feature of the game. So first off, do you feel like because when I was teaching some new people to play recently, they weren't aware that it was a function, because you have to hold tab and click it, right? Have you considered either moving like that into a more visible way, or do you think that's a viable route to go down to try to help with behavior?
Yeah, I mean, I think that mute is absolutely a viable tool for the community to have in order to manage their own experience. I think that we could definitely improve our mute system, and it's on our list of things to do. It's not currently at the top of our list, I will say that, mostly because we're trying to tackle some other big hotspots of toxic behavior where it happens, and the mute feature does work currently, but we could definitely use some better education tools to help make sure players understand that it exists. So.
Who's next? Okay. Oh.
So, hi. I was the one person at the beginning of the talk who didn't raise his hand. I don't play any MOBAs, and that's for a reason, because I feel like the genre itself kind of has a reputation as all games, like drawing toxic communities. So my question was, what do you think it is about the genre itself that kind of draws what seems like more toxic people than usual, or do you think that reputation is not deserved, and why?
So I think a big part of it is that our game is competitive. You can't play it in a non-competitive way. You know, there's no single player like, you know, grinding ore for something or whatever, right? So you have to play against people, and when that happens, adrenaline, testosterone generally tend to be bigger amounts, and people say things and do things that they might not otherwise do when they're in a competitive scenario. So that is definitely one thing.
Yeah, and I think the other, besides being highly competitive, it's also a game where it's very hard to succeed as a solo player. Within a team, you do need support of your teammates. Like it does highly revolve around teamwork, not just 5 people existing on the same map on the same side. So I think those two factors combined definitely can elevate the potential for misunderstanding and miscommunication that leads to toxic behavior. I will say that I think that we've ended up with a reputation above and beyond what exists, but that's not necessarily surprising, and that's something we absolutely need to work on, is not only making sure that it's a great experience, but that people understand that we have been working on it and that they can play a big part of that. So,
yeah, we tend to find that the bot games have the least amount of toxicity in them because, I mean, they're technically competitive, but people just kind of try whatever.
yep. Who has the
Who's got the mic?
All right. Okay, you hear me. One of the things that I was wondering why the reporting function before and after games. I know you guys include the chat logs within the game, but there's sometimes toxicity happens even before the game starts, or sometimes it even happens after the game. Like, people can get away so much after the game or even before the game because they're trolling by saying mid or feed, or topper feed, or jungle or feed, or this and that. And I know you can't exactly fix that, but why? I would think it would be awesome to suggest a reporting feature before and even after the game.
Sure. So we've talked, yeah, absolutely. We've talked about that a lot on the forums. We agree that there is a lot of toxic behavior that can occur in champion select and in the post-game screen, and we would love to tackle that. When we dug into it, what we actually found is that most people who behave negatively in both of those arenas do get caught by the tribunal, because try as they might to behave normally in-game, if they're a toxic player before and after the game, they tend to be a toxic player in-game as well. So adding pre- and post-game chat is, again, on the list of things we want to do, but right now, because we noticed that most of those players do end up getting caught by our systems, we're pretty happy to deprioritize it slightly to get on some other large priority stuff like champion select in general, and making that just a better experience. So it's on our list, but it's not at the top at the moment.
Okay, who's got the mic?
They're mystery mics.
We can't see it.
Hello.
Head into this.
I love your Ramus hat.
Thanks. So how there's like a different like diamond, gold, bronze, and things like that. How come there isn't like a system where if people are toxic, they get paired with other people that are toxic and people that have good behavior? One way or another, they'll either leave the game or they'll stop those kind of behaviors.
So that is a very popular suggestion. What we've referred to it as internally, and when we've discussed it on the forums, is Prisoner's Island. If we shove all the prisoners on an island, eventually they'll become Australia. Generally, the biggest problem there is most people who act in a toxic way, especially the ones who aren't highly consistent toxic players who would get banned by the tribunal anyway, tend to not actually be very self-aware that they are acting in a toxic way, and so they might end up being paired into games and not really understand why, and so they have no path to reform because they don't know that they're bad. Additionally, what it does is it does create a situation where people exit out of the game faster. The problem in a free online game, though, is they don't actually exit the game. They just create a level 1 character and start trolling in games with a bunch of low-level players, and that's not a great experience either.
Character all the way to 30?
It absolutely is their loss, but it does affect so many more players in really harsh ways that what we'd rather do is find ways to put them on a path of reform on their main accounts, and help create that self-awareness through feedback loops, and those are sort of the problems that we're looking at. In general, we just feel like Prisoner's Island will create a lot more negative situations than it will actually put people on a path to reform.
Hey guys, so within the tribunal, what have you guys been putting in place in order to prevent people from just voting to automatically punish people? Because right as it is right now, there's not much of an incentive to actually look at the cases and get a 95% correctness rating instead of just auto punishing and getting 90%. So are you guys putting anything in to maybe incentivize people actually looking at the cases?
Sure, so we have a couple things. We have things behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. So the things in front of the scenes is if you look at your voter profile, we keep track of every case you vote in. And while you may get a very high accuracy rating, just hitting punish a lot because, well, we try to only put people into the tribunal who deserve it. What you'll actually notice is that you won't have very good streaks, which, and you'll have a lot of streaks broken because you accidentally punish a player that is, not guilty. So that's one thing that we do in front of the scenes to try and give you insight into, hey, like yes, you are hitting punish on a lot of the correct people, but you're not doing it in a very accurate manner. The things behind the scenes is we keep track of your votes and your patterns of behavior, and if we notice that you're someone who just spams punishes a lot, regardless of whether people deserve it or not, you will eventually lose power with your votes and get not allowed to vote in the tribunal anymore. So, we also do manual sweeps of that kind of stuff occasionally just to understand that pattern, and so it's something that I think that there's a lot of people jump to that conclusion just because we do have a lot of people in the tribunal that tries to. We are very strict on who we put into the tribunal because what we don't want is a lot of false punishes. We want more false pardons than false punishes. So people go like, oh, if I just hit punish all the time, I'll get 90% accuracy. And it's like, well, hopefully 90% of the people we put in there actually do deserve it. But we do keep track of stuff behind the scenes and try to give you visibility of that through your voter profile.
Okay, who's next? There.
Hi. Oh, hi. Okay. Excuse me if I have no idea what I'm talking about. I haven't actually done the tribunal cases in a while, back when I got 15 IP as my reward. Is there a feature to report or to punish the reporter? And if so, why not?
So you mean specifically punish the person who reported them?
Who started the report? Yeah.
No, there isn't. Generally speaking, what we want you to look at within the tribunal is, is this behavior acceptable or not? If you pardon and someone keeps reporting people who get pardoned, they will eventually lose power with their reports. We keep track of that on a reporter basis as well. Okay. And we've also done manual sweeps of people. We did a manual sweep of people sometime last year where they were using the report feature as a bullying tool, and we banned them as well. So we do keep an eye on that stuff and try to keep it accurate, but it's mostly a behind the scenes thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, if you had somebody who, if you were reported for reporting someone, it would make you less likely to use the report feature, even if it was a legitimate use of it. So we don't ever want to dissuade people from using report when they think that they should. Okay, who's got the microphone next? It's like a surprise every time.
Cool. I've noticed at the end of the game, during the bit where you can report people, there are a few categories that, as far as I can tell, just kind of disappear your vote or your report off into the ether, like unskilled player. I actually kind of like that because it gives people a chance to blow off steam without really realizing that they're not doing anything. Do you have any other features that you implement or that you're planning on implementing that help angry people blow off steam without actually hurting other stuff?
Nothing that specific. I mean, I think it's definitely a nice feature of reporting. To be clear, though, we do capture all that data, and we just don't necessarily use it for the tribunal. We do use it for other things. Unskilled player, as an example, we use to gut check our matchmaking algorithms and understand where they may or may not be out of sync. But we don't have anything on our dockets explicitly for a blow-off steam feature. Probably, maybe the closest thing is restricted chat, where you only have so many messages, and so once you're past your messages, you could type into the ether as much as you want. But nothing specifically around that.
Thanks.
Can we actually get, if you have a microphone in your hand, can you actually just stay standing, even if you're not actually asking a question? That way we can know who has the next microphone.
Hi, so I was wondering if you could go back and go into Pillar 5 a bit more, about creating better match chemistry. Is that actually just part of the matching algorithm, or it's game systems, or what do you do?
We want to do multiple things. So some of it is improving the matchmaking algorithm, and some of it is trying to give more visibility into that. We don't have a lot to explicitly point at there because we haven't done a ton within that pillar yet. We have a bunch of stuff in the works that hopefully we'll be able to reveal later this year. But the main thing that we've done so far is for a long time, the matchmaker didn't include number of wins, like it just didn't consider it. And that was actually causing a lot of friction because people just couldn't build trust and confidence in their teammates, even though they may or may not be this exact same skill because they didn't have the same number of wins. And so one of the things we did relatively recently was add in number of wins as a soft piece of matchmaking. Like it won't determine all the things, but it will help guide it. And so hopefully when you play games, you generally are playing games with people who have the same amount of game experience as you do, and that helps you build trust and confidence in those players. So that's an example of some of the stuff that we want to do, but we have a lot bigger plans. So, thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. So just a quick disclaimer, it's actually been a little while since I played it, a few months, so my information might be outdated. But one of the things I found most interesting is when you guys implemented like positive feedback rewards where people could say an honorable opponent or you know, somebody who helps other people learn the game, I forget what it's called. But anyways, but obviously there was some criticism that they don't really do anything. It's kind of nice, you see it on the profiles or whatever, they get a ribbon. Have you guys ever thought about, I'm sure you've thought about, but what are you guys' thoughts on actually having some sort of real benefit to that? Is that something that you guys have ever thought about in the future, or what do you feel about it?
There is a real benefit to having those ribbons. Occasionally, we gave it, what is Santa Baron?
Santa Baron.
Santa Baron was a skin that only people with the ribbons got.
Wow.
So
it was honorable players in general and players who acted sportsmanlike. People with ribbons got first in line for that. And in general, yeah, like absolutely, we want to make sure that those players, you know, feel that they're rewarded for being a positive influence on our game. But what we don't want to do is provide extrinsic rewards that are the only reason to do that.
Yeah.
So the main thing that we've done in that space is, one, try to give out rewards on a semi-regular basis to players who act in a sportsmanlike way. But another thing that comes along with that is there's actually a 80% correlation of games with 0 reports with people who have those crests. So people who have those crests actually do have a pretty positive impact on the games around them. So I would say long-term, probably we won't ever put in intrinsic rewards like, oh, if you have a crest, you get +5 IP or anything like that. But what we will do is absolutely continue to look at ways to reward those players when the opportunity presents itself in cases like Santa Baron and that sort of thing.
how many people have Santa Baron, by the way? Oh, that warms my heart. That's so good.
So I actually want to piggyback off of the unskilled player question back this way. I just was curious to see why that's considered an offense, even if it does disappear into the ether, because it seems to instill from the very foundation that it's okay to report someone for being simply bad. Like that just seems like a toxic thing in and of itself. Like this person sucks, I get the chance to report them among these laundry list of actual offenses. Like what is the rationale aside from an algorithm underneath the hood that being a bad player, and which is purely subjective in and of itself, why is that an offense?
I mean, I think that the main two reasons were actually hit on by the question. One is we do track, you know, matchmaking. If someone is honestly being paired into games that they are not ready to be a part of, then we want to make sure that we understand why that is and potentially fix it within our matchmaking algorithm. But secondly, it is something there where people can have bad days, people can have bad games, and by having that report there, part of it is like, hey, if you're really angry at this person, maybe you click this report button and select this thing from the dropdown instead of yelling at them and cursing at them and making them feel really shitty about it. Instead, you can blow off steam by reporting that to us and making sure that if that person is having a string of bad games or is actually unskilled versus just having a bad game, that Riot Games knows about it. So those are the two primary reasons.
Yeah, and reports don't always result in any kind of punishment. I mean, you have to have a history of being reported in order to get to that point. And so making sure that we educate the players that, you know, reporting is a tool that you use to try and combat toxic behavior, but it's also, we have things in place to make sure that reports don't result in the punishment unfairly of a player. And being not good at the game is never going to get you banned.
Yep. Yes, hello.
Hi. So, at least I want to recognize that you guys do understand one thing, because coming from a psych graduate, that some of the problems do come from. First off, is how some people actually, because by them not recognizing there is a consequence, therefore they continue to act out in certain ways. So I'm glad you guys see that. But most of all, one thing that I've been seeing lately is something that I'm terming as a banding kind of process, where lately I've been seeing more so there is a lot of people that actually, when they play with their friends, or oftentimes when they play with their friends, this group, that's when they tend to troll others in the sense where they will call someone bad, even though if they weren't doing anything wrong, if they weren't saying inappropriate language, and they would actually just purposely, with their friends over team chat, whatever, decide together, let's go report this person, or let's go like flood the chat so that it's on evidence in chat logs, say this person's doing this person's doing that, when actually they've never done that. Or sometimes you might see like the other team is saying out into all chats, report this person for doing this or whatever, but you on this side of the team did not actually witness that on the chat log. You would not know if that was true or not. And I've even been involved where sometimes my friends, I've just been doing this where it's like, once we join the champion selection, two people will call for the same thing, and then it's been popular for people to start, copying chat and immediately just pasting it right onto the chat and say, that person obviously called mid first, or who did not log in last, to be able to see who called mid first. And they would tell their friends to purposely copy the same chat, delete the first line, and then post by and say, yeah, that person, my friend called mid first. How do you intend to possibly deal with this so-called banding thing where it's like, or say, two people on the bot lane, they queued in together. One of their friends are not as good, and they happen to be feeding, and then they're blaming a jungler for not coming, but when in actual, their friend is not doing as well, the lane is not doing well, but they're choosing not to tell their friend they're doing well. They rather baby their friend and rather blame it on someone else.
Sure. So the main way that this is combated is when things go to the tribunal, the full chat logs are preserved, so you can see everything happening in team chat and all chat. So the community has actually been pretty decent at seeing when nothing is actually when they're like, oh, this person is being racist, and there's no record of them ever being racist in the chat, and the guy is in fact in team chat going like, no, I'm not. What are you guys doing? Why are you doing this? Generally speaking, the community's been pretty good on picking up on that, and they do pardon those cases. In the cases that they don't, we can often review cases and see that, and we have access to pre and post game chat and do sweeps to understand that behavior. I don't have anything specific about any other features or anything like that, but we are aware of that sort of behavior, and generally speaking, we try to make it so that our features can still be used as a tool to see that behavior and report it.
Okay, and I see a wrap-up sign. How much time do we have left? One more question?
One more
okay.
question.
But we'll be here as well, so if you guys have questions after the panel, we can totally just talk with you.
So, last person, last mic. Oh, there we go.
Where's the last question?
He's over here.
Okay, wow, that's loud. So something I've always been curious about is, because I've basically been in the same league, and I only play ranked, I've been there for like 3 years at this point. Do you guys tend to notice that at different rankings or in different game types, there's a tendency to over or under report or report for different things?
To a degree. I think that between queues you see that a lot. So as we alluded to earlier, in A Shock to No One Ever, co-op versus AI is in fact the most pleasant experience you can have in our game. And conversely, ranked, the most competitive mode of our game, is in fact the worst, quote unquote. But as far as like between bronze versus silver versus gold versus plat, you actually don't see that much of a difference. The only thing that stands out to me when I look at that data is that platinum and diamond and challenger series players don't use the report function as much as you would think. So they actually use it the least. So.
Okay, well, thank you guys very much.
Yeah, thank you guys.